Well, thank you, Mayor and members of council. Tonight, I will present to you the proposed FY 2015 budget. It's a $1.2 billion financial plan, and it's based on the city's priorities, which were established in September 2011. You may recall back in September 2011, the city moved from a set of priorities that were maybe 15 years old to a set of priorities that had goals, objectives, and performance measures attached to them. The cornerstone of those priorities is a well-managed government. In addition to that, we have safe, healthy, and inclusive communities, lifelong learning, environmental sustainability, economic vitality, and workforce development, and accessibility, mobility, and connectivity as rounding out the 6 priorities of the city. So those are the priorities that the council established, and then the council left it up to the administration to establish goals, objectives, and performance measures. And I will say that each individual that works for the city is evaluated in part based on those performance measures that go back up to the objectives, the goals, and the priorities that are set by council. We're trying to stay focused on the why. If we go back, this will be the 4th budget that I present to you. And the first budget that I presented to you was really a blank canvas because it was a number of opportunities that we could have as a city. From that, we went further and we established the priorities. The council established the priorities. And last year, we had a term of building for the future. And this year, it's really neighbors building neighborhoods. And you'll see that as a theme in my presentation tonight. During the past year, we had discussions throughout the community about what do we see our city as and how do people view the city. And something that came about over and over again is that people are transforming their neighborhoods. So the concept that people really believe that there's an opportunity for their voices to be heard here in Norfolk resonates hopefully in this budget. The groundwork for a well-managed government is the concept of neighbors building neighborhoods. There are a number of strategies that we've established over the years, and the centerpiece of that is neighbors building neighborhoods, which is really a community engagement process. Along those lines, we've had other strategies such as Healthy Norfolk and Smart Processing. And we have been identified as a resilient city, from bond rating upgrades to our recent identification as an all-America city, which they focused on 3 programs that we have: Neighbors Building Neighborhoods, the way that we address our veterans, as well as our flood mitigation strategies. It actually culminated this past fall in the city of Norfolk being selected as one of 33 cities across the world, not across the state, not across the country, but across the world, identified by the Rockefeller Foundation as 100 resilient cities. So these strategies are not just getting recognition in our backyard, they're getting recognition across the world, and that's attributable to the council and you're establishing the priorities. We're growing as a city, we're thriving as a city, and we are the region's authentic urban experience. With the population increasing, with $1.3 billion in development projects, and our recognition as the financial, the business, the medical, the educational, and the arts and culture center of the region, it's a great time to be in Norfolk. Our ultimate goal for the administration is to deliver to you a well-managed government, and that really means that we're going to be data-driven, we are going to be effective, we're going to be efficient, we're going to be responsive, accountable, inclusive, but most importantly, customer-focused. Over the past 3 budgets, we have had a number of strategies that are rooted in sound management strategies. For example, last July, the council approved new financial policies. We've right-sized and consolidated departments. We refined service delivery, and we shared services not only between the departments within the city and organizations across the city, but we even reached out to Chesapeake and Virginia Beach for opportunities for shared services. So where are we now? FY15 and beyond. We'll go back to the council retreat this past September, where it was very clear to the administration that the council wanted us to focus on 3 key areas. One, a well-managed government, keep our financial house in order, and begin addressing compensation issues that have been with us for a while. Also, one of the goals from the council retreat was to provide funding for neighborhoods. It was very clear that in the budget that was approved last year, there weren't dollars set aside for some of the neighborhood plans, and that was something that council strongly suggested or urged the administration to make sure that that was a part of the FY15 budget, and a focus on education priorities. We came back to the council in January to reaffirm that we were headed down the right path. The guiding principles for this budget, it's not just that we find opportunities to raise taxes or just make cuts. We can't raise taxes and make enough cuts to prosperity. It's really a five-pronged approach that we've been discussing for about a year. That's not only raising revenue, reducing expenditures, becoming more efficient, growing the economy, and also sharing services. So I'm pleased to tell you that the FY15 budget is structurally balanced. So in other words, ongoing revenue matches ongoing expenditures. That's been a challenge for us over the course of the last few years. During our presentation on the financial policies and our recent trip to New York, where our bond rating was upgraded, that was a concern that the bond rating agencies had, that while we had financial policies, one of the concerns was this structural imbalance in the budget. So we had a 5-year plan, and I'm very pleased to tell you tonight that we've been able to accomplish that in year one, and it's really because of an effort across the community. It's not easy to get there, but for us, it's important to have that as a foundation. So what about the FY15 budget? It's about $5 million less than the approved FY14 budget. Much of this results from streamlining operations. We have 34 fewer positions in the entire budget, but that's not positions that were eliminated just to close a gap. As we went through this process over the course of the last year, we look for opportunities to provide the same level of service or enhanced services with limited resources. One of the guiding principles for this budget also is to not focus just on FY15, but to focus on FY15 and FY16. And that's important because in the past, by just having a focus on one year, you really don't account for what are the actions of one year and how they impact the next year. So what do I mean by that? If we go back to the FY12 budget, it was balanced, but it wasn't structurally balanced. We had almost $18 million of expenditures that were ongoing, that were not matched with ongoing revenue. So what did that do? So when we go to the FY13 outlook, not only do you have to make up for that almost $18 million of ongoing expenditures not matched with ongoing revenue, but you also have additional costs: inflation, healthcare, debt service, retirement. So that caused us each September to have a discussion about closing a gap somewhere between $20 and $30 million. Same concept, FY13, about an $800 million budget, almost $19 million in one-times that weren't matched with ongoing revenue, one-time revenue that was supposed to support ongoing expenditures. So when we got to FY14 outlook, we had the same concept, the same problem with a gap of exceeding $20 million. The structurally balanced budget takes away much of that pain in the out years. I'll tell you right now that with this 2-year outlook, we don't have FY16 balance for you today. That's not something that you'll vote on next month. But we want to get to the concept that we hope sometime in the next couple of years that we can present to you a 2-year budget that is voted on and approved so that we can have that 2-year lens. So what were some of the guiding principles for the FY15 budget? Well, again, begin addressing the council's concerns, eliminate the structural imbalance as we talked about earlier, centralize internal functions and strengthen our core operations, eliminate redundancies, and consolidate funding streams so that we can concentrate on effective programs, and more importantly, so that we can concentrate on the needs of the neighborhoods. So we fund results. The funding strategies are focused on outcomes. The outcomes are aligned with the priorities, and we're holding departments and department heads accountable for the outcomes within their existing budgets. For example, we have an additional focus this year on performance evaluations for the department heads. Not only do we have quarterly financial reports that we can see where departments are from a financial state status, but going forward, we also want to have quarterly performance reports so we can see how we are aligning with our priorities. So we've hit the reset button. We are focused more on the core missions of departments. The programs and services are measurable, and the departments are accountable for their results. So some of the major budget balancing strategies, one is cost containment. We started off, and we had this discussion in January, we started off by level funding departments. So what you received in FY14 will be what you receive in FY15. The next step is that we talked with with departments, and we said, what are your core missions? What are some of the things that you can get out of the business of doing? And what we did is we had targets, about 1% for each department, in terms of how can you stay with your core mission and still deliver the programs and services that are outlined by the council. Those two strategies alone were worth almost $7 million in savings. In addition, we captured retirement savings, we restructured the debt service payments, and altogether, we had more than $14 million worth of saving strategies. Some departments received partial exemptions from these strategies: police, fire, and the sheriff's office. And some, in Norfolk Public Schools, received a total exemption from this process. So the Norfolk Public Schools, what was provided by the council in 2014, became their base for 2015 without any 1% reduction or any reduction strategies. I think it's important to note that this council has always supported Norfolk Public Schools. As a matter of fact, if you do an apples-to-apples comparison of Norfolk versus other cities in the region, no one has provided more funding for schools between FY 2008 and FY 15 than this council. If we go back and take a look at FY 2014, the current fiscal year, we have a pot of $378 million. And here, what we're showing you is that there are multiple funding sources related to schools. The three gold coins are the sources that are related to the city. Now, two are very obvious to you. That's the local operating budget, the roughly $112 million, and the Construction Technology and Infrastructure Fund, which was established last year, which is a lockbox only for school construction technology infrastructure. But also there's, in this current year, almost $17 million of in-kind services that the city provides, whether it is from recreation parks and open space or other city departments that are paid for by the city, but they don't show up on the school's books. So the concept is, I realize we can always attempt to do more, but it's very important to start the discussion with a clear picture of how the funding works. In this current fiscal year, our locally generated revenue grew by about 2.8%, but the contribution to schools was about 7.5% increase. If you go to the proposed budget, again, what we have as a base is a level funding for schools, and I think it's important to note that our locally generated revenue is projected for FY 15 to decline by 2.4%. But even though our locally generated revenue is declining by 2.4%, our commitment to schools stays the same. We don't have a funding formula policy like some other jurisdictions. Some other jurisdictions are actually providing less funds, but that's more or less related to a funding formula that they have in place. So as we go back to our strategies for the proposed budget that I'll deliver to you tonight, the partial exemptions occurred for police, fire, and the sheriff's office, total exemptions for Norfolk Public Schools. So we still had to find opportunities for savings. So in terms of identifying savings opportunities, we went to each department and we grouped them. And we talked about what are some opportunities for us to, once again, deliver the same level of service without trying to make a budget target that is having someone release because we couldn't make our budget target. And I'll use one great example. We have, police and fire, that they are in the same building, but they have their own separate administrative functions. So getting two chiefs in the room on a Saturday to discuss how can we deliver the same level of service by combining some of these back office really spearheaded other discussions throughout the administration. So facilities maintenance, human services, human resources, there are a number of opportunities for us in this proposed budget to, again, deliver the same level of service by having consolidations. The three areas of focus, as I mentioned earlier, the well-managed government, safe, healthy, and inclusive communities, and lifelong learning. I'll go briefly over each one of those. So under well-managed government, it was very clear. You said, let's keep the financial house in order. We have a upgrade from the bond rating agency, and we want to keep that. As a part of that discussion, we said that we would achieve a structural balance in the budget within 5 years. We did it in one. We'd also increase our pay-as-you-go capital funding, and we would fully fund our reserves. So in terms of reserves, we have a 5% reserve, which has a minimum goal of 40.8 million. Where we're projected to be at June 30th of this year is to be closer to $42 million. And that's some practices this council has had over the last few years of when there's a surplus, taking a portion of that surplus and putting it into reserves, which is exactly the right way to do this. It's one option, correct option, because it's a one-time going to a one-time. Our risk management reserve, we're projecting as of June 30th this year to be at the minimum. So we have a $3 to $5 million goal. As of June 30, we project to be at $3 million. The economic downturn reserve, which has a $3 to $5 million goal, as of June 30, we project to be at the lower limit, which is $3 million. Even with the funding our reserves, which is good news, even with the structurally balanced budget, which is good news, our challenge is when you start to look at the budget through this two-year lens is FY16. If we did nothing else, if you take everything that we're proposing in FY15 and you annualized it and you carried it out to 16, where would we be? So if this were September 2014 and we were having a retreat, I would tell you that the gap would be about $9 million before we added anything. That's not $20 million, that's not $30 million, that's much better news than we've ever had in the past. So you would say, manager, you say it's structurally balanced, how do you already have a gap in 16? There are going to be additional costs related to annualizing any salary increase. There are additional costs related to benefits and additional costs related to debt service. As we go forward, I think it's very important for us to have a very brief discussion about our portfolio, our locally generated tax. It's about 26% of the revenue, that we generate on the local level is associated with real estate. So the good news is that overall assessments grew for the second year. So it's 1%, but it's still growth. That's overall. So the FY 2015 budget that we're proposing for you does not change the real estate tax rate. It keeps it at $115 for $100 of assessed value. But again, overall growth is just 1%. If we go back 30 years and just examine growth in real estate, if we take FY15 out for just this discussion, so FY14, and we go back 30 years, 30-year average has been 5.5% growth. The 20-year average has been 5% growth. The 10-year average has been 6.6% growth. So again, while we have overall growth of 1%, that's not close to what we have been accustomed to in terms of 25% of our portfolio. But there's a decline in residential assessments, and that remains a challenge. So even though overall assessments have grown the last 2 years, this will be the 5th consecutive year of residential assessments declining. So what does that mean? On average, a homeowner's tax bill will go down by $9 in FY15 compared to FY14, because while there's growth in overall assessments, residential is declining for the 5th year. So if we go back to 2010, compare the 2010 bill versus the 2015 bill, on average, the tax bill is down $263. So that puts it into perspective of our challenge. Instead of having a source growing between 5 and 7%, we're growing at about 1%. So when I discuss some of the things that we're doing in the budget, and one of the reasons that FY16 will be a challenge, even though FY15 is structurally balanced, is that we rarely have enough resources for all of the requests that are out there. But if the new normal is closer to 1 or 2% growth, then I think it's time for the administration to provide opportunities or some potential solutions to the council in terms of how can we get the overall revenue picture to be more consistent with what we've experienced in the past. A sustainable revenue policy would provide more predictability. Again, we've reduced expenditures, we become more efficient, we shared services. So maybe a little bit more focus should be on the revenue-raising piece and the growing economy piece. So I say that to discuss a little bit about compensation. Compensation reform, we talked with council last year about a strategy called ARMED, attracting, retaining, motivating, and developing our employees. While the majority of localities in Hampton Roads have had a comprehensive overview of their compensation plan or compensation reform, the city of Norfolk has not. So it's time at least to discuss what are some of our challenges in attracting, retaining, and motivating and developing employees. The driver has been the declining revenue that has led to stagnant employee salaries. We've had a difficulty in attracting and retaining employees. So in 2014, without going outside with a consultant, we used inside staff, and we did a comprehensive review of compensation with our goal, again, of attracting, retaining, motivating, and developing employees. At the retreat, we talked about 4 areas that we would try to achieve in the FY15 budget. That's a living wage for our employees that fall below the living wage, market adjustments for our employees that are 20%, 6% to 20% out of the market, a 5-and-5 conversion to be aligned with what's happening across the Commonwealth, and a drop for sworn officers in police and fire. The proposed budget does all 4 of those. In addition, we are recommending a 2% general wage increase for all general employees and constitutional officers beginning January, and also a January step increase for all police and fire sworn. That would be an element that we had discussed maybe doing in FY16, but we believe that it's the right time to address the general wage increase and the step increase. So the path forward, it's always been a multi-year plan. We never intended to come to council and just recommend 1 year. We would like to make sure that the revenue is sustainable. With sustainable revenue, we'd like to come back in January 2016 with another 2% general wage increase for the general employees and another step for the sworn police and fire. And then in 27, establish an ongoing salary increase program based on the revenue. So safe, healthy, and inclusive communities. I'll focus a little bit on neighborhoods and on human capital. If you go to Plan Norfolk 2030, Chapter 5, it discusses enhancing economic vitality, and we have 19 strategic economic development areas. Even within our own capital improvement plan that we'll deliver to you tonight, we have funding for neighborhood plans, Broad Creek, Fairmont Park, Southside, Ward's Corner, and in that funding is going to be close to $3.8 million. And we even have funding in the housing authorities, conservation and redevelopment areas where there's more than $1 million for Ocean View. But I believe that if we just focus on those 19 areas in those 4 areas, we miss a great opportunity. So the vision is to create an environment where people transform their neighborhoods and put all of the neighborhood initiatives under one umbrella. So with this budget, we're proposing creating a Department of Neighborhood Development. It will implement a new service delivery model that focuses on neighborhood collaboration and community problem solving. It would be an advocate for all neighborhoods. As a result of this department, it's a result of consolidations between planning, budget, communications, and technology. And is in all of our other consolidations, it's actually providing a higher level of service with less resources. We'll hit the ground running because I believe leadership is very important. And I can't think of a better leader for this new department than James Rogers. So James currently is our Special Assistant for Community-Based Initiatives and Outreach. I think that's too large of a title. Let's just call him the Director of the Department of Neighborhood Development. So I believe we'll hit the ground running with James. In part, James and his staff will help provide strategies that focus on the physical environment. So in other words, we have all of these funding sources, but we really haven't taken a look at these sources in a focus that can help neighborhoods more. What do I mean by that? For instance, we have almost $3 million in prior funding related to neighborhood corridors, gateways, NB, and Neighbors Building Neighborhoods funding. We want to present that to the council for an opportunity to be more strategic about how we can target this for specific neighborhoods. Some of these accounts have been around for years. So we're closing the accounts out, putting them in one bucket so that we can be more responsive to all neighborhoods across the city. Same concept with human capital funding. Many times we typically focus on the general fund, but between the funding that happens in our CDBG, some of the funds within the departments, if we put it all on the table and we start to fund those programs and services that are aligned with the council's priorities, I can guarantee you we'll get a better result. Lifelong learning, it's very easy with lifelong learning. It's partnerships, and it's an infusion of quality. Earlier this year, Gary McCollum spoke to the council about the E3 initiative, and Gary eloquently said that we have to change the trajectory of how we're focused on early childhood education. If we're ever going to get a workforce, we need to compete. If we're ever going to get the workforce, we need to compete. And I think that Norfolk is at the forefront of early childhood initiatives, from Norfolk Public Schools to Ready by 5 to the new E3 school in Park Place that Gary spoke of, to even the Uniting for Children initiative in PB Young, where they have the stone soup mentality where everyone can contribute something for a better outcome. So I do believe there's a lot of promise throughout the city. School construction, okay. We have the capacity in the capital improvement plan, the 5-year capital improvement plan, to build 5 schools. So in other words, we no longer have to wait. When the city is ready, when the community is ready for the construction of the schools, we have the capacity built in the CIP. So in other words, if we were ready July 1, we could build them all July 1. It takes up capacity as we go forward in the 5-year CIP, but the good news is that Compostela, Broad Creek, Larchmont, Ocean View, and Camp Allen, we're ready. We have the capacity in the capital improvement plan to build those schools. Also, based on financing needs, the council established a CTI last year. So this Construction, Technology, and Infrastructure Fund, which was a lockbox only for schools. Because of the financing method that we're going to use, there's about $3 million that will be available June 30 of this year in that fund that we will not need for school construction. That $3 million can be provided to the Norfolk Public Schools for their technology needs. So moving forward, we have work cut out for us. The budget attempts to address numerous concerns across the city. We believe that collaboration and aligning our resources with priorities that gives us an opportunity to deliver upon the priorities that the council has identified. As I mentioned earlier, it's a $1.2 billion financial plan, and the administration is ready to address the council's questions as it relates to the plan. I believe our future is bright, and we have a great future. Speaking of the future, we have, I think, in front of you the first cut of the FY16 budget cover, and that was completed by Daryl DJ Daniels, who's an aspiring artist and a sophomore at Norview High. And DJ is with us tonight, and so I want to thank him for being a future in thought and even helping us get started on the FY16 budget cover. So thank you, DJ.
Thanks for coming down, DJ. Thank you.
And as always, Mayor, I like to thank Team Norfolk. That's not just the employees, but also the residents, and also Sabrina Joy Hogg, who is an assistant city manager, as well as the budget director and her extremely talented staff for putting all this together. So I turn this over to you, Mayor and Council.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jones, for an excellent presentation. The council actually received the budget last evening, and we've had some opportunity to look through it, but we'll have in the coming days a greater opportunity to digest it. And we have our first budget discussion with the manager scheduled for next week in our informal session, and then we have a public hearing on the budget scheduled for May the 7th. So, and then we'll have further budget discussions after that. But congratulations on a great presentation, Marcus, and a proposed budget. And it looks like you've done a great deal of good work here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, now I'm told we can just leave everything right there and then just move right into our agenda items here tonight. So, Mr. Clerk, if you're ready.